Oh, this weekend sitting happens in the context of our everyday bodhisattva practice period for some of you. And if that's the case, it's happening in the context of intentions you have formulated. Maybe it happens in the context of your assessment, how well you're doing with regard to those intentions. And for some of you, it doesn't happen in the context of the practice period, and you're just here for a couple of days. Someone asked me if I would continue our discussion of Dogen's essay, Uji, Being Time. And I had the feeling of like, no, not everyone is initiated into the context of it. But then, it's what's on my mind, so the answer is yes and no. Now something, there were a few people at my last talk where I commented on Uji line by line, and actually 3 of them have talked to me about like, well, that was kind of difficult to follow, which made me aware that there's a way to approach the topic of time through this text, which is from the 13th century by someone who lived in Japan in medieval circumstances, so quite different from us. And then there must be a way to approach time more from our immediate experience. And those two kind of have to meet if we want to make sense of a text like that. So today, no text, just our experience. I do think that many of our difficulties in Zazen have to do with time. And I don't think that's particularly obvious. It's like, I don't think that we are experiencing it as related to time necessarily. So let me point something out. What's happening in Zazen? I mean, a number of things happen, but you've got body sensations. Something about those body sensations is it's quite obvious, but the obvious is often the thing we don't notice. The body sensations all exist in the present. And it's the only place, the only time, and place, because those two are not separate, where they can exist. But it is also true that we have a relationship to the future and to the past. And let me just give a few examples of how we relate to the future. You may have, as we say, something going on in the future. Certain plans, or something on your schedule, or further ahead, plans, or ideas for what you're going to do in the summer or 5 years from now after you've retired. And those events in the future have an effect on you right now. For example, let's say you've got something pressing. Let's say, like I do, you've got a big accounting mess to deal with. Then you have certain deadlines that are foreshadowing themselves. Like there is tax day, but then there's the time when you have to get your books to your accountant, who gets real busy around this time. And so, anyway, I'm just giving an example. So, if you've got a problem with all this stuff, like I do right now, you may not feel particularly relaxed sitting on your cushion. Yeah? But this is just an example. It could be anything. It's like anything, that you feel you should be doing and it's important to accomplish in the future. And, maybe if you're a student, it's a paper you need to write, or, 20 books you haven't read. And while you're sitting with painful legs in this weekend sitting, you may have ideas about, maybe I should have not done this and be reading these books instead, or completing this task, or making some practical progress in my life that is now halted in this ridiculous way. Now this would be like a bigger way the future impacts the present. But even if you are resolved with being here at this weekend sitting, a certain period of Zazen that is particularly uncomfortable, it's like you may have thoughts about wanting to speed up time and having the dawn ring the bell sooner than later. Another way I think we can relate to the future is that we have certain goals for ourselves. Like you want to be a certain way. Maybe you want to accomplish something. Sometimes more internal goals, like you want to actually be over a certain kind of problem that you have, which can manifest as a kind of idea of wanting to be a different person. Like, I wish I was more compassionate or more patient or more generous, but here I am, this stingy fella. You have a negative feeling about yourself in the present and are hoping to overcome this in the future. This is like big theme in Dogen's writing is under the rubric of practice and enlightenment. Enlightenment is this future self that you are envisioning, and the practice is what gets you there. And if you have that as a structure in your life, the price you pay is that the present gets instrumentalized for some fantasized future. So what we're experiencing right now is actually doesn't have any value unless it contributes to this future goal. Now, about the past. There's many things we don't like about the past, I assume. Things that have happened to you. Things you did. and regret. There are things you like about the past, and something that can happen, which is, you could say is called nostalgia, is like you're comparing the present to the past, and you wish the present was more like the past. Also, something that happens in Zazen quite a bit. Well, I don't want to make like a map of practice or something, but my experience is that it happens more when you begin to meditate. It's like that situations from the past present themselves through memory. They re-present themselves. Like they come up. And I want to spend a little time on that. I want to explore this with some depth. Both pleasant and unpleasant, or wanted and unwanted situations from the past can re-present themselves. Now, one common thing when something re-presents itself that is not something you like is that your mind starts thinking about it. There is the simple re-narrating of the events, both in images and in story. Sometimes people just say like, oh, and then I got into that story, Well, it's could be like a little movie, or it could be just the way you have learned to represent that course of events in your life, and you kind of go through it or something. That's one, like basic function of memory. But then there is this way in which I'm just kind of like putting something together. If it's different for you, I don't know. I'm not really assuming that I know what your mind is like. I'm just offering something that you may recognize in your own experience. There's a way we try to reinterpret the past. This has always been kind of strange to me when I find that my mind is doing that. Now, there's different ways in which that reinterpretation happens. Sometimes you actually sort of try to reorder the sequence of events. This would be a little weird. But we'll get to why that might happen. Because it's like you omit something, or you change it around a little bit. Why? I would say, like, to be very simple, it's like because it feels better that way. It's just... Now, you also may find that there's certain narration strategies that creep into the interpretation of the past. It's like justification. Like you find reasons for why you did what you did. Or you speculate about intentions that the other person who was involved had for what they were doing. Like you don't really know why they did what they did, but you speculate. And sometimes if you speculate long enough, you are convincing yourself that this really is this person's intention, or was, and now it's become a fact. It was speculation, but now it's become a fact, or the truth. The simple sequence of events get embellished by reasons, intentions, mitigating circumstances, and so that the story of what happened becomes a certain kind of flavor. I was justified in what I was doing, or this person is not caring about me, or doesn't love me, and that's why they're acting the way they do, etc. You get my drift. Now, structurally, what I'm interested in when I observe this, notice this, and this is maybe an example of what I said yesterday, notice your experience with subtlety. There's something happening here where the self, what I consider myself, is separated from the experience. And this self that I feel I am feels compelled almost, at least, motivated to manage the experience. This separation is not obvious. And it's not clear exactly what the alternative to it would be. At least that's how I want to lay it out right now. Now imagine this. See if that's something that has been a part of your mental life. Do you sometimes think about what your life would have been if you hadn't made certain choices? If you had not, moved to that particular place, or married that person, or, decided to take a different career path, and so forth. It is interesting that the mind can create scenarios like that, alternative scenarios, both in the past and in the future. And the point that I want to highlight here right now is there's something strange here. It's almost like the self that imagines itself on a different course of action doesn't imagine itself as a completely different self. It imagines itself as it's sort of the same self that would have had different experiences. Do you agree? I mean, it's something, of course, when we imagine if I hadn't married that person, maybe I'd be happier. Or if I hadn't done such and such, I would have spared myself these kinds of experiences. And that's the motivation for it, right? It's you sort of imagine that the self had different experiences and attributes or something through a different course of action. But it's not something radically different. For those of you who have read Uji, or a part of it, what we discussed last time was what Dogen says, you are thinking that you have climbed a mountain and crossed a river, and now you're residing in the Vermilion Tower. That yes, these experiences, that yes, the mountain and the river still exist, but the experience is gone, and I am residing in the Vermilion Tower. This Vermilion Tower is like, it's this self that is separate from experience and can sort of like separate itself from it and kind of manage it and rearrange it in some way. This is an imagined place. This actually doesn't exist. Now, it exists in the way that we do construct it, and then it becomes actually the structure of our experience. And so in that sense you would say like it exists, but we are not separate from experience. And you are not a self that is sort of unaffected by what you experience. And now I want to return back, like why are we reinterpreting the past in this way, by way of justification or giving reasons or professing our good intentions even though the person got hurt? It's because I think we defend subtly the integrity of a self that feels like if I reinterpret the past this way, then I don't have to acknowledge that these kinds of behaviors are actually also part of myself. Like, I do get annoyed, I do lash out, I do, I'm not always loving, I'm not always compassionate. And if you find that you have reason to be annoyed, or that the other person is really is annoying, then you can sort of rescue a sense of self that doesn't need to be questioned or, more deeply acknowledged in its complexity. Now, I think that's a description of what is going on. Like, that's sort of an unexamined thinking process is doing that kind of thing. Now let's talk about maybe some of you think like, oh, this is very psychological, and yeah, it's true. Like if you ask certain questions, then it becomes very psychological. You could say like, and it's not a put down. It's just like a certain kind of inquiry. It's like, how come that I act the way I do and have a hard time acknowledging that I'm acting this way? And then you find like, oh, I grew up in this kind of environment where these things were not really given permission, so I had to pretend that I'm not having these kinds of feelings. So now when these feelings and behaviors do come up, I have a hard time actually admitting to myself that they are happening because my parents didn't want them to happen, and I internalized that. So, right? And so now you have an explanation, and if you have a skilled person to work with, they can help you realize that you're an adult now and that you have greater degrees of freedom in experimenting with your behavior, and that maybe you can give yourself permission now to have certain feelings or engage in certain behaviors, and that it's not inherently bad the way your parents thought it was, or, like that. And I'm narrating this as if this is like an easy process. Well, this could take years to, unentangle and find greater degrees of freedom. Zazen, in my view, is a different kind of process, and it's not incompatible, but it's different. Let's just see if we can bring out how it's different. Dogen has this other very famous essay called Genjo Koan in Japanese, and one way we can translate Genjo is to complete that which appears. To complete that which appears. Suzuki Roshi says in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, burn yourself like a good bonfire. If you do not burn yourself like a good bonfire, you will leave a trace of yourself. There will be a residue. The situation will be, still carrying something from what could have been burned completely, but wasn't. And if we take this image, and if we take it seriously, we could say like everything that represents itself from the past in the present of Zazen is a residue. It is a situation in which you didn't burn yourself completely. No judgment. I'm not judging anything, and you shouldn't either. It just happens. It just happens that something doesn't get burned completely. Now you get another chance. I mean, we take it very personally, If it's something painful, we think like, oh, I don't deserve that this is happening to me. But no, it wasn't burned completely, so you're getting another chance. Okay, I'll tell you a personal story which I've mentioned a number of times. I'm mentioning it now in this context in a way that I don't think I've ever fully thought about it that way. Part of my path into practice was that I had an incredible pain in my throat. And when I started, and so I went to a doctor and they diagnosed something and it had a name and blah, blah, blah. And I went to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist was a somatic psychotherapist in disguise, and she had me do certain body exercises, and sometimes she would ask me questions that I found very strange. I'm in my early 20s, She's like, well, do you feel that your needs are met? I remember her. I mean, she asked a version of probably not like exactly like that, but something like that. And I said, needs? Needs? I don't have any needs. And she would smile knowingly, but I left very disturbed, just like needs, I don't know. I don't know, needs. Am I supposed to have needs? Am I voicing my needs? Well, no, I'm not voicing my needs because I think I have no needs. It was actually, like now the process begins. It's like it was kind of like dangerous to have needs because it complicated my mother's situation, and so it was easier to not have any needs. Okay, so but then I started sitting Zazen, right? And now something happened that was very unexpected. Well, I had all kinds of, positive experiences in Zazen which kept me on the path. But then something happened that was very disturbing, which the pain in my throat increased dramatically. And there was a time, every time when I said Zazen, my throat would hurt like somebody had a knife in there and twisting it. Really bad. And so, but you're not moving. We're not supposed to. I took it seriously. And then at some point my body couldn't bear the tension anymore, and I would sneeze or cough, and it would just like be a little explosion that would set the pain back a notch, and then it would build again. All right, so it's disturbing. It happens every day, multiple times a day, and you don't know what to do. And I want to emphasize that, okay? You don't know what to do. Okay, then you read something, it's like, not knowing is great. The fuck? But I want to say something here. It's like, not knowing is exactly the place in which something can complete. Because if you had known already how to complete it, you would have done it. It is something unknown how to complete. So not knowing is nearest. It's what puts you right in touch with what needs to complete. And this is how it's different from some psychological process where somebody wants to fill in the blanks with knowing. Oh, it was like this, and if you think about it this way, then you'll know how to do it. There are places of not knowing. You don't know how to take the next step with this pain in your throat. Okay, what happened for me is I started crying. And it took a certain form because it's like I couldn't really cry in the Zendo all the time, so I would use Zazen to let this tension in my throat build up, and then Zazen is over, and then I would go to my room and cry for 10 or 15 minutes. And then it was time to go to breakfast. And so I learned that I could cry for 10 or 15 minutes, let that subside, and then go to breakfast as if nothing had happened. Which sounds like a bad thing, but it was brilliant. Right? It's like I had basically a ritual now of crying every day. And so I did it. And went on for months. So it's interesting. The body knew what was needed, right? Unexpressed grief. But I didn't understand what the grief was about. It didn't reveal itself. There's another not knowing. It's okay. We don't need to know. After these months, I was in a much better place. Something had completed itself. I don't know if it's 100%. I don't think so. I can still feel the grief. But It's not impacting my throat. I can sing now. It also isn't impacting my life. I know that. It's impacting, and no, this is not quite true. It's there, it affects it, but it's not blocking it. Okay? So I don't have to understand. Bits and pieces of understanding may come. But I don't know. I now think it's like much of that understanding is just speculation. It's just what the mind pieces together so that it can feel better. But even that is okay. I'm talking to myself, just don't take it too seriously, Don't build it up into some kind of truth just because you've repeated the speculation long enough. What if it's all much deeper? What if it's not even in my lifetime? What if it's intergenerational? I've mentioned this before too. Like, I went to this kinesiologist once. I didn't know what I was doing there, but my sister said I should go. So I did. I told her that I had problems. And she said, okay, let's find out where they originate. And then she, you hold your arm and she can ask questions, and then if your arm stays strong, it's like yes or no, if it's weak, it's, what is it? It's no. If it's strong, it's yes. Anyway, I think that's right. But anyway, she said, where did the problem originate? Again, I'm in my early 20s. She said between, I don't know what it was, 22 and 20. No. Between 20 and 15. No. Between 15 and 10. No. Between 10 and 5. No. Between 5 and birth. No. Before birth. Yes. Oh. Okay. In the first generation before birth, no. In the second generation, no. 14th generation, yes. The problem originated in the 14th generation before my birth. So I said, what? What's helpful about that? She was also selling oils and stuff. But that you could, bring into your aura and be better. But anyway, I'm making a joke out of it, but who knows, I was open. I needed a problem. I needed my problem to be less problematic. She said, well, you know that it's been around for a long time, so don't expect it to resolve that easily. That was actually helpful, because I had attributed so much of it to myself. Like that there was something wrong with me, and that it was all like something, my responsibility. So that was interesting. Then I started thinking about my family's history, and that's another story. I could speculate the 14th generation. How they all came from France and Austria and were displaced by Catholic, because they're Protestants, by Catholic kings and who didn't want them, and it was all just a long story of displacement. But again, I don't know what's true, but what was clear is that something needed to complete itself that wasn't complete, the grief. Yeah. So This is what Zazen is in relationship to time. It's the one way I look at it is it's an open space. You're opening a field of experience, and something can show itself, and you don't know exactly what to do with it. And I think it's a very bodily process. An emotion, in this case, in my story, an emotion that wasn't expressed, an action that wasn't taken, a movement that was not completed. One of the biggest contributions, I think, to contemporary psychology is trauma research. And trauma is exactly that. It is something that wasn't completed and is now encapsulated somehow energetically. And it's so difficult to complete because if you allow it to re-present itself, it can be so intense that you still don't know how to deal with it, and then it gets encapsulated again, and then that's called re-traumatization. But what this shows is that when something isn't complete, it just keeps coming back from the past into the present. Now, we're talking about this as like maybe major movements, actions, emotions that weren't completed. But let's talk about small things. Your Zazen practice makes you more sensitive for completing things. It's like, don't leave things incomplete. Don't leave something unsaid. Don't leave something undone. You're just adding to the pile. You become more sensitive to that. And you just do it. You become more courageous in a way. It's like, no, I'm going to say that. This hurt. I'm going to say it. Sometimes, you don't know what happened, whatever theory you come up with of like, I don't know, you're more familiar with not knowing, so it doesn't all have to compute and stuff. So if you've done something that didn't work for somebody else, you don't have to understand it. You could just go and apologize. And it completes something. Right? Because the justification and the reinterpreting of the story that you narrate to yourself is all kind of not working. It's all trying to rearrange the past so that it doesn't feel so bad, when the only way forward is to do something in the present. The impact is already there. Like you've done something, you didn't mean it, but it had an effect. Well, you can rearrange it in your mind and say like, well, this person shouldn't be upset because I didn't mean it. It does nothing. So then you have to just acknowledge what is the case. There is upset, so then, what kind of repair is possible without, neglecting your own experience. You don't apologize for yourself, ever. You apologize for behavior. Well, I wanted to say a little bit more, but I've been talking for a while. I'll make it very brief. I think it really doesn't help to think of time as as a series of points. And we only do that because we have some idea of the clock and some idea of shortness. I've mentioned this, right? I think it's much better to view your life as situations. And along with those situations situations are chunks of time. Like the situation we're in right now, this Dharma talk, is a chunk of time. But also, when something comes to you from the past, it's a chunk of time. Now, if you don't allow for a chunk of time to be a chunk of time, immediately you're in the danger of letting it be incomplete. Time is not endless, right? This Dharma talk has to come to an end. I just noticed that. But it's interesting. I have a feeling for that chunk of time that the Dharma talk is. And inside of that chunk, I'm free. I can do something in that chunk that brings it to a completion. I just noticed that. I mean, I enacted it for you. It's like, I wanted to say more, which is my internal feeling of it's not complete yet. But something is coming to an end here, so maybe I have to speed it up. But not as a kind of, I don't know what to say here. It's like I still feel free. I still feel the freedom to bring it to some kind of completion. So we do have to bring our situations, the chunks of time that they are, into clock time because we have social contracts and coordinate with other people and so forth. But it's important to do it in a way that respects this need for completing that which was begun. Now, you can't ever, and that is a feature of emptiness, you can't ever complete it completely. You just bring it to some kind of completion. Right? It does feel like it's burned. But relationships are endless. So we also need trust. We also need the trust that you can take it up again and make another chunk of time. Make another chunk of time. The oryoki is like this, you know. You open it, you eat, and you close it. And then it's complete. And then you eat again. Thank you very much.